Okay, so thank you, João. Congratulations for another, I'm sure, wonderful event about customer success. This is such state-of-the-art thing that so much people talk about, think about, but not everybody knows exactly what it is. But here we have two perfect people to be with us. So our talk will take 45 minutes, sure. In the end, as Ron told you, there will be 15 minutes of questions and answers, and they told you, and I reinforced that. Maybe we will not have the time to answer all of them, but our great guest that I will present in a second will be absolutely delighted to give you the answers after via written. So with no further things, I will start this talk about customer service as a growth engine, how SaaS companies can tap into Europe's top talent, presenting my guests. So starting by ladies, Ariane. Ariane Tyler is a senior customer success manager and the employer of Record Space, helping global companies hire and support distributed teams. She has lived and worked across 3 continents, speaks multiple languages, and brings experience from operating across and within both public, private sectors. From writing policy for the Australian government to guiding international companies through the complexities of remote hiring, Ariane combines a global perspective with a practical client-focused approach to building strong partnerships and driving customer success. Welcome, Ariane. And now I will present Aurelio. Aurelio Cunha is the Director of Customer Success at Pipedrive, a global CRM company. He's located in Boston, USA, and has been with the organization for almost 2 years now, leading a team of 33 customer success professionals with 18 members located in Portugal. Sorry for the pause, but I think that's important. His career background is in customer success in the tech research and financial services industries, and is passionate about leading international teams that help customers not just adopt software, but grow their business with it. So this is the 2 wonderful people we have to take advantage of their knowledge, their presence. Thank you so much. And for the people who are listening to us, let me give you just this quick clarification. We will try to drive. This won't be a typical debate like one question, one answer. We're going to talk, the 3 of us, and we agree that there are 3 main building blocks that should go around this talk. Feel free to use the chat all the time. In the end, we're going there, we're going to read, and maybe there's something we're not going to mention and you would like to be answered. So we're going to be around the part from customer support being just a kind of a customer success, being a kind of a support function to a real growth engine to companies. The second part, or the second building block, will be like, why Europe? Why Europe? Is it, why the choice? Is there a reason for that or not? And we're going to talk about some myths around customer success and all the scaling of customer success and all of these things. So let's start by the first part. Customer success, even though it's new, we know there's a lot of different understandings in different companies, people, whatever. But there's a difference between looking at customer success as a support function to believe that it is a growth engine. So my first question for whoever of you wants to answer is, what needs to be the biggest mindset shift, and how do you convince a leadership that believes that customer success must be a kind of a support and not exactly with the importance it has or it should have? To any one of you who wants to answer. You know we're going to talk.
Yeah, I mean, if I may, Aurelio, and please feel free to insert your thoughts in. Look, I think ultimately there was the identification that going directly from a sales team to product or service adoption, and then having a support function to put out fires, so to speak, worked to a degree. However, it certainly missed out on one of the main points and certainly one of the main building blocks of the CSM function, which is retention. So there was this idea that kind of getting someone in the door and then saying, off you go, have fun, was just not useful to anyone, and at the very least to the customer. I think in terms of being able to really pull leadership along with the story that we have to tell is certainly through data. And I think the data absolutely speaks in and of itself in terms of what it is that we can present in respect to things like adoption rates, retention, and certainly that bridging of the gap between sales and support has proven time and time again to be the one thing that gets people through the door, but then keeps them seated at the table.
Yeah. Aurelio, do you want to pick up this part of sales, customer success, or maybe you had something to what Ariane has just said?
Yeah, sure thing, Carla. I agree with Ariane, right? You have to understand the history of customer success and how this organization within company was born. If you go way back, probably over a decade now, going into 15 years, you saw that sales had a lot of BDRs, business development representatives, that were helping the sales account managers to create leads, cold call, get in front of customers, right? So the history of customer success was born out of a combination of support and sales. Fast forward to 2025, not only are we are a separate organization, but we're a thriving and growing one, right? And going back to what Ariane said, the core component of a customer success organization in most industries is retention. There are many other factors as we've evolved over the years of what entails to be a successful customer success representatives, and we'll touch on those shortly. But let's just focus on retention right now, because there is a formula. It's a simple formula that can be complex to execute, right? And us, everyone on this call here as CS leaders, we need to focus on that, right? So what is that formula? Retention is really a combination of trust, value, and engagement. So what is trust? Trust is developed between the customer success manager and the customer, right? At the end of the day, you look at all the industries we work in here, whether it's CRM, HR, automotive. I'm seeing different logos pop up on the screen here. They're highly competitive. If you go to Google and you search for those industries, you will get many, many results. So why do customers choose you? They choose you because they like doing business with you. On top of your solution and your product working for their business, they enjoy their partnership. So that's where the trust comes in. And then the second part is the value. What is it that you bring to the table through your product, through your service? And then thirdly, the engagement. If you're not engaging with these customers, they're going to fall off. They're going to go somewhere else. They're going to buy a different product. They're going to buy a different solution. So the framework is trust plus value and engagement. And that's what gets us to that retention that Ariane brought up.
Like marriage?
Exactly.
Yeah, because if you're not engaged, you can have value, you can have trust. Well, trust, maybe it's the first one, as you said. Thank you so much for your reflection. It was really enlightening. Do you have any example, because we're talking about improvement of retention and expansion? Do you want to share any kind of example where that happened in one of your, not companies, but in your careers, where customer success had a clear role in improvement of retention or expansion of the business? If suddenly, go ahead.
There's so many to pick from. I think, though, one of my favorite, and it wasn't just because I was the customer success manager that assisted, but certainly in terms of an additional role that customer success managers have, and certainly feeding into that trust, retention, and engagement, is that ability to see big picture. And certainly when we are working in SaaS technical areas, which certainly I'm is not representative of all of the industries that utilize customer success managers effectively, but certainly heavily represented here, is the ability of the CSM to be able to look across the organization, to connect dots and to utilize and to call upon the expertise within the organization when and where it matters and when it can be the most impactful. In the particular example that I have, it did include the payment of an invoice, which is inherently sensitive as soon as we start talking about money, and even more so once we start talking about inflated figures, very high amounts of money. And it was a customer who was refusing to pay. I was called into the situation because they wanted to take the customer to collections, which is a highly contentious and very legal framework to tap into. And oftentimes, once you kind of embark on that path, it's very difficult to kind of backtrack, and certainly more difficult to then retain that customer. They weren't paying because there were errors that had been in those invoices for several months. And so the amounts that they hadn't been paying had certainly grown. Our treasury team, true to their reason for existing, was certainly doing their job by pursuing this customer, but didn't have perhaps the bandwidth to sit and to work through their invoices in the way that a customer success manager knows how to and will have time for. So honestly, de-escalating the situation not only ended up resulting in correct and accurate invoices and the customer feeling confident to pay, but ultimately with the organization receiving the money that it was due under the service agreement that was held between the customer and the company.
And probably avoiding future similar problems.
Absolutely. And not only future similar problems for that particular customer and for our organization, but certainly once engaging in processes like collections, any future activity that customer has, even outside of its relationship with the company as it was, it can be tragically impacted.
Yeah. Aurelio, anything you want to add to this, or we jump on the next? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll make a quick comment. Ariane touched on a key area of what CSMs do in organizations, which is de-escalation, right? I think we can all agree here sometimes in the era of AI and bots, sometimes we just want to get on the phone and vent with our customer service professionals at that company, right? We want to talk through our issues and we want to get some assurances, some deadlines, some next steps. And that's what CSMs do a lot, right? That human component of what we offer, regardless of your industry, is going to continue to be key, because as we get more automated, that desire for human connection and assurances is going to continue to be crucial in all sectors, right? So the value that CSMs bring sometimes is just hopping on a call and doing all of that triage that Ariane just spoke about, right? Between billing, engineers, products, finance, legal. There's a lot that CSMs do, and they do it well, right? Because they're good listeners and they're well organized and they keep things moving for the customers. Because sometimes even when you don't have an answer to the customer, you have to let them know, like, I don't have an answer, but I'm on it. I'm working on it, and I'll keep you updated until we get there. So that there's value in that, and we can't forget that.
You have genuine interest in that person, in that customer, and that's your job.
Yeah, that's the trust we talked about.
Yeah, trust again. Yeah, those three. I think we're going to close with those three big words you mentioned in the beginning. Okay, so let's move into a little bit of why Europe, because at least you, Aurelio, I know you both manage teams really intercultural, but Aurelio, we have a team all around the world. And why do you believe there's an increase in the US SaaS companies turning to Europe now? Why is this happening? Do you have an explanation? Go ahead.
Yeah, happy to take this one first, Ariane. Let's start with the no-brainer here, multilingual workforce, right? As we think about the talent pool, within Portugal. Obviously, there's English, that's a given, right? And then we jump into Portuguese, which is native to pretty much everyone working in Portugal or someone has lived there for long enough. Then you bring in Spanish, some French, some German. You will see in candidates that we hire or interview for as well. Because if you are a global workforce, you're going to have different needs across Europe and bleeding into South America as well, right? So our Portuguese CSMs are actually supporting our customers down in Brazil, right? And then we have also US CSMs supporting customers in Latin America and some in Portugal that have that Spanish language as well. So we see a vast majority of candidates coming in with those language skills, and that alone is one thing to look for, right, within the talent pool in Portugal.
Yeah, so that's one big point. Ariane, you want to add some?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. And certainly as someone who sticks out amongst the three of us as a non-European, but who has certainly lived here for the last 8 years, I would also suggest that European workers certainly support the model of remote working and that ability to span not just geographical locations in terms of language, but also in terms of time zones. To not only have that crossover with where end clients are located, but also where internal engineering teams can assist and the CSM can act as they are mandated to, as a bridge between those two groups. I'd also suggest, and it would be remiss of me to say, particularly within the EOR space, the hiring of highly educated European workers, and I can certainly attest to the level of education between Portugal and Spain, is of a great advantage and a huge untapped resource, particularly in an era when H-1B visas are now being reviewed by the US government and will be increasingly difficult to have workers that can be sponsored physically located within countries or within the HQ. So why not take advantage of concepts that allow for these limitations to be broken down, to educated individuals to be tapped and to value add, but also in terms of time zone, language, and location. I mean, it sounds preposterous to me that American companies rather would not seriously entertain contracting someone under those conditions, particularly now that it's also going to represent savings in terms of visa sponsorship.
Yeah. May I add something here that it's a little bit around, but picking up Aurelio's words saying that you have to be good listeners after all. So it's all about creating a really trustful, value and engaged relationship with your customer. Do you believe that the cultural fact that Portuguese or even Spanish people are very, they have a lot of hospitality way of, as well as Brazilian, okay, sorry, but we have this kind of hospitality. Do you believe that's there might be a factor of success also that might be in the equation?
Absolutely, 100%. I don't think that can be denied or even removed from the equation.
Yeah.
Leaving Australia, if you had have asked me if culture would have such an impact, I probably would have laughed and shaken my head. However, having lived in South America and now certainly in Europe, culture and those formative building blocks to a society certainly do have their expression within the workplace. And it is certainly something that I can confirm based on my own personal experience that between Portugal, the Iberian Peninsula, just in its entirety, very welcoming, very much based on, as you mentioned, hospitality, on that idea of being open and receptive, but also if you consider its geographical location and the history of the Iberian Peninsula, the other cultures that they have come into contact with, and certainly the positive influence that has had within the workplace.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll also add and
Aurelio,
double
yeah.
down on cultural adaptability is so key with our
Mhm.
customers as well, because you might have a CSM that has the language skills and they have the skills of a good customer success professional, but they don't have that cultural experience, right? And that's what we see with a lot of our workforce within Portugal. They've worked with US customers, they've worked with Brazilian customers, because if you worked with these different countries before, they know they negotiate differently, right? They have different expectations when it comes to communications styles, right? Because again, you have to be able to connect with them at a human level. So if you've had someone coming into your organization that has worked with Fortune 1000 and Fortune 2000 companies within the US, they're going to approach those customers differently as they do with, say, a customer down in Brazil. Even they might be at the same spend level or industry, but there's a different approach in how you communicate and how you build trust, right? So that cultural connect between the Portuguese workforce, the Brazilian workforce, there's a common, a shared culture there, not just the language. So that's very key when you're thinking about building your team, is not only will your customer success representatives get along within themselves as a team, but also how will they connect with your customer base? Because that's going to, again, going back to building that trust. It's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a kind of a joke in the hotel industry that says something like, if you need a good plan, call a Danish. Excuse me for Danish people, but they're great planning. They're very good planners. But if you need something impossible to fix and want a MacGyver, call a Portuguese. So it's a little bit, I'm not saying that you should do it, but adaptability and flexibility and yes, all you said makes all sense. And what kind of advice would you give to a company that it's right now considering to get their first customer success hire? What kind of advice would you give, since you've been through all that?
I mean, I think key to customer success is being set up for success internally within an organization. There needs to be a setting of the scene which demonstrates that a customer success manager is the voice of the customer internal to the organization. There needs to be a sense of removal of obstacles and whether that be the systems that you choose to support the CSM role, down to the way that the cross-function teams treat and think about the customer success role. But there needs to be a shared effort to remove obstacles to the customer success managers doing their job, understanding that ultimately by serving the customer and serving the customer well is going to always result in good outcomes.
Yeah. Aurelio, anything you want to share?
Yeah, that's aligned with my philosophy as well when building teams, right? As CS leaders, we have to continue to go to further leaderships, right? Further leaders within your organization, and continue to show how NRR, churn reduction, connects to the bottom line growth, because it can be missed sometimes, right? There's a lot of focus sometimes in sales and product and marketing. You have to remember how important it is to keep a customer, right? Than it is to, it's a lot more cost effective than acquiring a new one. So going back to those metrics, keeping your CS team centered on that is going to be key. And emphasizing too, as you're building your teams, cultural versatility, right? We talked about diversity, language skills, and general skills as well. And also loyalty, right? You want to hire customer success managers and specialists that are going to be with you for years to come, because we put in a lot of time and resources and energy, right, and passion into building these CSMs, ramping them up. So you want to make sure that they're focused on what they need to do to become a strong CSM, but they're in for the long run, right, with you. And that's the type of talent you want to hopefully attract.
I'm sure that in your journey of hiring people and dealing with all these so different people, you found challenges in hiring and overcome these challenges. Do you have in mind any kind of moment where you were challenged with a hiring, and then how did you overcome it? Like wrong person, or I thought this culture would fit this one, but the culture of that company doesn't fit, I don't know, the profile. Any challenge you want to share?
I mean, I wouldn't suggest that it would be so much in the hiring. I think particularly when you consider the people that are coming to the CS role, whether that be because they are naturally drawn to it or they are identified as people who would be amazing in that role. And you find that a lot when people go for sales roles, and whoever is hiring says, look, you sound really good, but I think your skills are going to be so much better if you can make that switch, based off mentality, based on the way that they present themselves. But I would very much suggest that the courage isn't in so much making a hire. The courage can be found in doing something about a misaligned hire before it impacts a high volume and, dare I say, high stress team or role like the CS function is and certainly can be. I mean, we've spoken about escalations. Escalations are my bread and butter. It's, essentially why I connect in the morning and certainly what I get paid for. But I think that courage can be found, and I would put the challenge towards any leadership team to the moment that a misaligned hire is identified, that they are removed as soon as possible, because nothing will break a team cohesion like someone needing to carry their work and a poorly performing team member.
Yeah, so be quick on your...
Absolutely, jump on it. And I mean, it's not to suggest, and I think there is certainly a desire to suggest or for people to feel that these are personal decisions that are being made, but I think ultimately they are decisions that are made, that they're business decisions that are made for the health of the organization and ultimately to be able to effectively serve the end client. But if you want to see like an unhappy, uncohesive team and start to look at why that is, I would suggest 85 to 90% of the time it's a misaligned hire, and jumping on that, being quick and doing something about it will alleviate the team, create space for the right hire to come in, and will certainly allow the team to reconnect and to heal, to then be able to take on the job and move forward.
And probably the person itself will feel much better somewhere else.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. Aurelio, I was seeing you doing that. I was like, what does he want to say?
Yeah, I'm going back to memory lane here as I think through previous organizations I've been at. And thank you for bringing this up, Ariane. It's such a real topic. And I hope the audience can appreciate how important this is, right? Because we do our due diligence with our hiring departments, with our hiring managers. We bring in our team. Typical CS leaders in larger organizations will have a very robust hiring process to look out for some of these issues and to really get the best candidates in front of CS leaders. But at the end of the day, you're all taking a leap of faith with that individual, right? Because candidates put up their best behavior, their best facade sometimes to get through the interview process and get an offer. And then as you start working with them and you get to know them, sometimes the reality is very different. And I keep going back, and I was nodding as I was hearing this in a previous organization where we had one candidate that delighted us. Very sharp, great presenter, well-spoken. He had all the skills, the experience. And then once we hired this individual and we assigned their portfolio, they had all these reservations around the type of customers they wanted, their political views. And it got very, very hairy very quickly. And it wasn't a good fit for the team, for the company, for the customers. It completely 180'd on us. So things can change, and that's okay, right? Thankfully, in my career, this has happened very, very few times where we've had to take action. But to Ariane's point here, you have to be quick, because you don't want this to spread, and you don't want this to showcase across customer success, and it becomes your brand, or it becomes a big issue because of that single person you were not maybe 100% on, right? So be bold, be brave, move on, right? Maybe there's a better fit, as we said earlier, to that person somewhere else. But you have to own your team, your culture, your organization with pride. And when it doesn't work out, be quick, be swift, and move on, because it can damage you longer term.
Yeah, so be present, be aware, eyes, listening, checking the well-being, the organizational well-being of the team. If something goes wrong, identify, be quick, make a decision, even if it doesn't sound a popular decision. Make your decision, clean the team, move forward, and everybody's going to be much happier after, and the success will not be compromised. Is that the kind of that's the kind of challenge that you cannot say that you will not meet again. It's part of the job, isn't it? So
exactly,
we're talking about people. We might, as you said, you hire the most perfect person, and then okay, yeah, something. So the challenge, it's going on and on. The less it happens, the best, I imagine. But so be aware, be close to your team also, right? Because if you're not close to your team, things might be happening, and it's not that easy to identify, etc. Okay, so we know now that a good listener is important. We know the time zone, we know adaptability, we know about hospitality, we know about being quick when something is harming the team and the result of the customer success. Let's talk about a lot of myths around customer success. I could say that we could spend 45 minutes talking about myths, things people believe it's the way they are and they're not. And but let's start by, is there one myth that in the beginning you believed at first, like, oh, I'm sure this, and you found out that in practice it was not like that? If you can go back in your career, you know, like in the beginning when...
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is so much perhaps, well, definitely a myth, but I also would suggest a piece of advice. One of the words that we hear bandied out around a lot within the customer success space is empathy. And I would suggest that customer success managers, and I know what I'm about to say is probably going to cause some gasps in the room if you were off mute, but I would actually suggest that customer success managers need to empathize less. And I'll tell you why. A quick analogy. If you see someone drowning in quicksand, empathy would motivate you to jump in with them. Compassion would motivate you to go and find a rope. And so I would suggest that a high degree of empathy is actually an incorrect indicator to attribute to a customer success manager for two main reasons. One is empathy narrows your view, compassion broadens it, but also takes into consideration the objectives, mission, and vision of the company. How many times have we felt such a high level of empathy for our customers, you know, discounts of tens of thousands of dollars, and feeling that this is going to retain them? Well, of course, a discount of 20,000 euros is going to retain your customer, of course. But does that then serve the mission, the vision of the company? And I would suggest it doesn't. I think there needs to be much more of an emphasis on compassion to broaden the minds of the customer success manager, to even sometimes give the space and the grace to take a step back and say, is this really my problem? Yeah. Is this even mine to deal with? And so I know that this is quite controversial, because even with the majority of job ads that are out there. You look at the desired skill set, the desired characteristics, the interpersonal and personal skills that companies look for, and empathy is incredibly high among them. And I would actually suggest that is a myth. You can become far too tunnel visioned. You can take on far too much as a customer success manager, with empathy, being driven by empathy. And that can certainly lead to burnout. Whereas compassion, you are also part of the equation of the solution that you find for your customers. So I would suggest, big myth, empathy.
Yeah. Can I add something? I don't know if you know that there's an amazing book. It's called Compassionomics. It's written by two doctors. João, I can give you in the end the author and the book for some of you who want to read it. And in fact, what it says is empathy, it's putting yourself on other person's shoes and feel what other person is feeling. Compassion, it's the same, but taking action on it. Kind of. I'm really resuming. It's not about customer success. It's, again, doctors writing the book, but it's an amazing book for organizational culture. And now that you mentioned compassion, I had to come up with the Compassionomics, which I like the name. And now, Aurelio, how about you? Myth or beliefs or whatever you want.
Yeah, I do want to touch on what Ariane brought up around compassion versus empathy, right? It's finding that balance because it can be an issue. And that's why I like hiring CS talent that has sales background, specifically complex negotiations, new business. The reason for that is if you have too much empathy, right? You are a CSM, you're working with a customer that's been with the organization maybe 3-4 years, they're well established, and they find something to cut back costs on. And that might be your SaaS solution. And they go to you and say, I want a 20% discount or we're leaving. So it takes skill as a CSM for you to know, is this person bluffing or they're actually leaving, right? Because putting together, implementing a whole new SaaS system for your organization takes time, effort, energy, a lot of people. So are they just trying to cut costs and they're bluffing? So you need to be able to negotiate that, right? If you are too much of an empath and you go, oh, I'm super scared, this customer's going to leave, it's going to affect my numbers, it's going to look bad for me. I hear you. Here's the 20%, right? You have to be able to push back, negotiate, and find a middle ground. So I think that's a key piece of very strong CSMs nowadays, especially if you have a commercial component to your KPI, to your role. You have to be good about that, right? You have to take your time and not jump to the path of least resistance, which is to give the customer what they're asking, right? Dig deep, understand, are they really leaving or are they just trying to get to a better place financially?
I still have two things I would love you to give your comments to, which is, how do you ensure that your customer success team stay aligned with the company strategy, and how can what practices have made the biggest difference managing across borders? Because it's not right here, it's not a typical office where everybody's together and meeting together and having coffee together, etc. So maybe starting with the first one, how do you ensure they stay aligned? If you want, you can choose one for each, because I told you it was going to fly at the time, so we still have 5 minutes. It's not that much. But how can we make sure they stay aligned with the company strategy?
Allow them the space to actively impact it. I think another role of CSM is that canary in the coal mine type situation. And oftentimes we are the first to know about or to see repeated incidences or to understand issues that could be fixed, that would divert tickets, that would release the cross-functional teams and certainly the customer success function to be able to focus on that more human aspect of it, as opposed to running around and dealing with technical support issues. So I think the best way that you could possibly make sure that as the CS team is aligned with the company values, mission, vision, is to allow them to actively impact it.
Okay, Aurelio, managing across borders. Or
Great.
something.
Yeah, great international CS teams, they share one thing, right? They're like one unit. They're not five different regional teams stitched together, right? And how do you make an organization operate as one unit? You have to put in the work, right? Regular one-on-ones, team meetings that are time zone friendly. If you have the budget, get people together on a quarterly basis to do some team building activities. Throw some trivia events, right, virtually. They cost no money. You just get people together and get them to share what's going on, right? Create Slack channels, do competitions, spiffs, little things go a long way, and it builds that sense of community. We have CSMs in Australia, in Germany, in Portugal, in the US, and extremely different time zones, but somehow everyone's on the same page, and you have to use all these tools on a regular basis to keep everybody on the same page, because the moment one or two start feeling out of the loop because they weren't invited, because we didn't make the effort to work out the time zone issues, you start to drift away, and then you're operating separately, and then you have this CSM in this region, these CSMs in the other, and then you have a cultural shift, and that you will see that show in the work and in the customer relationship. So it's key to keep it all together.
So it's a kind of don't lose an opportunity to be together.
Exactly.
100%.
In spite of getting exactly to know what's the culture of our company. Okay, so we're reaching the end. I would like to ask you for 1 minute each, more or less, for a final. It can be tip, it can be an advice, it can be a lesson learned, whatever you want to say about these almost 45 minutes we've been here together before closing. What would you like to leave to the audience that is with us and has a lot of questions? I don't know if it's a lot. I see the chat with questions. I will have a look. I hope there's a lot of questions. And final statement, tip, advice, whatever you want to feel like. Yeah.
I think, certainly when I speak with my team and, within those mentoring relationships that I've been able to have and to maintain, I think the one piece of advice, particularly because there is no rest for the wicked and CSMs work extremely hard, I would suggest have hobbies, have a life outside of work. I highly recommend to anyone who would listen is, they're not going to put "she was the best CSM" on your tombstone when you die. They are going to put, "she was an amazing sister," or "a great best friend," or, whatever it is that is not "she was an excellent CSM. She met all of her KPIs." That's not, and if that does end up on my tombstone, I'm coming back to haunt you all. So I would suggest, as a parting piece of advice, it is really easy to get very much caught up within what it is to be a CSM, what it means, because it does have such a drastic impact. Make sure that you are looking after your relationships outside of work. Make sure that you also have a purpose outside of your four walls, whether they be virtual or otherwise. It is so necessary.
Yeah, and it's key to be balanced. Aurelio, we still have 1 minute for you, and then we're 43 minutes, so we're gonna keep it on time.
Yeah, since Ariane hit on the human cultural piece, which I love, I'm gonna keep it corporate for closing here. I'm gonna leave you with a reminder, a tip, and a takeaway, right? Reminder, CS is not a cost center. It's really the team that ensures that every dollar of revenue works harder for the company, right? A tip, I already talked about this, right? Showcase to your organization as a CS leader how NRR and churn reduction connects to the bottom line, right? You have to focus on the qualitative, right? Customer loves the CSM and they've achieved XYZ, but at the end of the day, we are companies, for-profit companies for the most part, that need to deliver on numbers. So you have to bring in the quantitative as well. You have to know your numbers, your metrics, how you're driving the organization forward. And then lastly, as a takeaway, right, I think was a big piece of this webinar is Portugal is one of SaaS best kept secrets, right? Talent diversity, an international mindset, and affordability, right? Making it a competitive advantage for CS orgs as well. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about expanding your team.
Well, I guess I have 10 seconds to close to keep on time. So thank you so much for the two of you. Thank you for all of you that have been here. And remember, we have a question and answers, 15 minutes. And if not all the questions are answered, you'll get the right answers. And I keep in mind the last takeaway, Portugal, it's a good investment. I take away 3 things you said: trust, value, engagement, and Ariane, compassion. It's different from empathy. And I would say that if I have to choose a sentence, I would say right now, if I still think customer success as a cost, I'm missing the real growth engine, and Europe's talent is proving it. That's what I feel. So thank you so much. And we're on time. Questions and answers. I don't know if I pass my voice to João or if I jump directly to the chats to see what do we have here. So what I'm going to suggest, oh, there you are, João. I don't know if we have a lot or not. Please give me a hand, because I suggest we go by order. So the first question, first answer, and okay?
100%.
Okay.
From the first one on, yeah.
So can you help me? The first one is, how do you ensure that customer success is aligned with sales, product, and marketing, so customer success can fully act as a growth engine? They don't have, we don't have a person to whom this question is made. So up to you.
I can chime in on this one. So there's a lot here because there are 3 big departments, right? I'll try to do it as quick as I can. So sales, most important thing, right? If they're bringing in the new business, is that handover. If you can provide your customer with a warm handover, a call, an email, introducing that CSM, it will go a long way. So at the leadership level, be aligned with the sales manager, operate as one, because the quality of their customers that they're bringing in is very important for your ability to retain these customers, right? So that handover. On the product side, one of the things we didn't have enough time to talk about is how important CSMs are for the product organization, because they are the front lines every single day, hearing everything that is going well and is not going well with the product, with the platform, with the widget you might sell, right? So making sure you're getting that feedback translated into product terms so things can be improved is your responsibility as a CS leader, right? The CSMs are taking it all in, but you have to be the one that organizes those thoughts and that feedback and passes it on. And then lastly, on marketing, marketing is a huge partner for sales and customer success, because if you go back, right, marketing markets the product, the service, eventually it goes to sales, they do the discovery, the trials, and then eventually converts. So you need to make sure that as a CS leader, what is being promised all the way from the beginning in the marketing is going to funnel through sales and customer success, and we're going to be able to renew it. So it all works as an engine, right? So keep in mind that you have to have strong partnerships and collaboration with all the leaders in these respective departments.
Okay, thank you, Aurelio. So we have a second question. Jose Paiva, you mentioned the importance of language for a CS role. Do you advocate that clients should have CSs who speak the client's language? For example, for Germany to have a CS who speaks German, for France to have a CS who speaks French?
Yeah, this is an interesting one, and it's an internal debate that we have had on many occasions. And I think it honestly comes down to it depends. But let me qualify that by saying it would, I mean, I work in HR. This is highly legal. It has a strong emphasis on compliance. And there is also high risk, and sometimes it's not even a risk, it is something that is part of the compliance, but with audits. And so there is a lot of written, or the requirement to have a lot of the decisions that are made about these legal components to be written and to be auditable. And so while I think it does help, and it is certainly a nice to have, particularly on calls when you can, connect with people within their own languages, I think ultimately it will depend on the types of audits that are undertaken, the requirement for those audits to be undertaken in which language. Because ultimately, while it is a nice to have, there are some industries that only operate in English. And so these auditable decisions must also be expressed in English. It's helpful, it's a nice to have, but I think ultimately, and it would certainly speak to retention and to building the trust, but I wouldn't necessarily, as a customer success manager, only speak Spanish to my clients or only speak Portuguese, despite the fact that I am capable. Certainly, where there is a risk of failing audits.
Yeah.
Connecting, sure, go right ahead. A nice hola at the beginning of an email, or que tengas un buen día to finish, awesome. But yes, I think you do need to be mindful about some of the legal components behind these items to decide which language an organization should speak in.
Okay. So we go to, I'm sorry if I don't spell, if I don't pronounce well your names, Hiram Damin. In your opinion, how many companies still confuse customer success with company success?
I'm guessing this might come down to recognition, as in, would a company necessarily adopt or steal a win that has come from the customer success team? I mean, ultimately, I would argue that they are quite difficult to remove one from the other. And in fact, there is a direct line between the two that should not be broken. But I think in terms of recognition and reward, I'd hope that we'd all work for organizations that reward and recognize their workers fairly, but I would also challenge the customer success leadership to make sure that their teams feel recognized and celebrated in meaningful ways that aren't just a Slack message with a high five.
Okay. So we go on Inês Miranda. What role does technology, automation, AI, data play in scaling CS as a growth engine? Aurelio, Aurelio, just to...
Yeah.
Ping pong, right? Absolutely huge role. We can do a full day workshop on this. Automation, AI, data, three different things here, right? We've been automating processes within customer success organizations for a while. Now there's AI, which bleeds into generative AI, which is a whole conversation around how we incorporate bots, right? And then data, we talked about data, the quantitative side of the business, show your numbers, right? As we move forward, as CS leaders, we have to accept the fact that we won't be able to scale or fully own all of customers, especially if you're a global organization servicing tens of thousands of customers, right? You won't be able to get to everyone. So we are in a reality where we're going to have digital CSMs through Gen AI, right? We're going to teach those models, teach those bots on how to answer on our behalf. We're going to have support 24/7, digital, in all the customer-facing teams, sales, support, customer success. So it's not about one or the other. It's how do you work together, right, to be able to get to all customers for different questions, because sometimes you don't need to schedule a call for an answer. And a lot of times, the bot is not going to be great. So how do you build actual digital CSM assistants within your organization if you are at that level and if you have that structure, that budget? So you're going to see more and more of that happen. It's inevitable, right? It's where we're headed.
Okay, now we have Mariana Marques da Silva. Slightly off scope, but quick one. For senior CSM at KM in Europe, what are the first 30 seconds screening signals, metrics, or artifacts, KBR, 90-day plan, portfolio, that trigger a fast yes? That's
Yeah,
tricky.
I'd love to answer this one though, because this is a common discussion. And I think, the first 30-second kind of green flags are usually about evidence of strategic ownership and customer impact, not just activity. So, fast signal yeses, QBRs or EBRs that go beyond just using stats. So we're thinking like clear narrative linking customer outcomes to return on investment, adoption, and expansion. I mean, 90-day plans are good as long as they're structured and outcome-oriented ramp-ups. I think otherwise they're relatively ineffective. It can't be cookie cutter. It has to be really getting at the crux of the reason for why this customer has signed up with you at all. I think portfolio management experience, being able to articulate clearly, handling a multi-million books of business, with examples of balancing proactive growth and reactive support. I think metrics definitely have to be there, particularly around churn reduction, cross-sell, upsell, executive management, proof that your customers and their feedback is actually not just being listened to, but acted upon. And I like to personally use my QBRs as an opportunity to say to many of my customers where it is relevant and where it actually applies and the example is real, but to be like, hey, do you remember that email that you sent me back in May with the feedback that, our invoices aren't granular enough? Have you noticed that in the last couple of months, we've actually changed that? And dare I say that is thanks to you and your feedback. Thank you for the opportunity and the patience in actually providing it, those sorts of, but it has to be real. It can't be fake. So I think in short, evidence of commercial impact, structured thinking, and executive presence is what is really going to make that immediate yes, but also an immediate repetitive yes. Every time there is a new ask, every time you mention, I don't know, an increase in fees, it's like okay, we get that. This is being an increase of fees, but we can see the direct and relevant impact of us paying more and the service or the product that we're receiving.
Okay,
That
so
helps.
Taba Mudilo, I don't know if I pronounced it well. What are the main challenges that CS face in the Portuguese context? And then we have just another one. So I would suggest we are 1 minute away. Maybe we can do both questions. Is it okay, João? Okay. So what are the main challenges that CS face in the Portuguese context? Aura, do you want to pick up this one, the other one? You can pick up both.
Yeah, you can always combine these, right? Because
Yeah,
we're talking about challenges in Portugal and Europe and lessons learned. And I can speak to my experience in the past couple of years. And I'm going to speak in the context of our more tenured senior CSM. Think about your best CSM. What makes that person successful, right? And I always look at the talent pool, looking at 3 key pillars that make a successful CSM at least in the SaaS world, right, where it gets a bit more technical. The first one is that technical aptitude, your ability to solve technical problems with your customers. You don't have to be an engineer, right? That's not the role, but you have to know enough and want to explore enough solutions so you can answer quickly during the call, at least get some answers. If every time you jump on a call with a customer, you said, I'm going to get back to you, guess what? The customer is going to stop jumping on calls with you because you're not bringing value, right?
There goes truth. Trust. There goes trust.
Exactly. Yeah. Like this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. No more calls with him, right? The second one, you have to be a strong collaborator and communicator, right? Internal teams, we talked about this, right? There's a lot of triage that CSMs do between billing, finance, legal, product, engineering. There's a lot, right, that we do. And then thirdly is having that strategic and commercial mindset, right? Building strong relationships with customers, but planning ahead, not just getting to the next monthly renewal, thinking about the next 12, 24, 36 months. How are you going to position your product, your service well, so you establish a nice relationship and a good foundation with that customer? So these are all things you know about. But to the question in the chat, right? A lot of times CSMs will have two of these pillars really well, and they lack on the third in all different combinations. So for us CS leaders is, how do we compromise, right? What is it that you can teach a CSM? Because sometimes they're 90% there. They have the culture fit, the language, but they're not really good at upselling. You can teach that, right? But you can't teach a person to be a strong collaborator, meaning if they're an introvert, they don't like working with others, it's very hard to teach that, right? So know where to compromise and what your organization, your team needs, because some things you can teach, others not so much.
Thank you, Aurelio. Ariane, anything to add on these two? We decided to combine both questions. So what are the main challenges, and what's your most surprising lesson managing international teams and collaborating with different types of leaders? Anyway, Aurelio already touched a little bit the two, but Ariane, would you like to close?
Yeah, I think
yeah,
certainly. So in terms of main challenges, I think sometimes in the CS world, it's prioritization. What can be deprioritized and what needs to be emphasized, and what's going to be somewhere lost in between. Particularly when you consider that, there's only 8 hours in a day, only 5 days in a week. I think sometimes that can be a tricky game to play. And I would suggest, or my favorite trick, ask my manager. You've now given me this extra body of work. You've now given me this additional customer. You've now given me 12 QBRs that I need to do by the end of the month. What would you like for me to focus on?
Yeah.
And I think it should, send some pretty clear messages if the response that comes back to you is all of them. And in terms of what has been a surprising lesson managing international teams, I think the biggest surprise for me is how people, depending on the cultural context that they come from, express displeasure. I think that's been the greatest surprise. And I think that this goes back to Aurelio's comment before about that continuous one-on-one, that emphasis and commitment on ongoing conversations. It's actually getting to know your team, not as a worker, as someone who can turn out tasks, but also to get to know them on a personal level. Because, kind of going back to the comment that I made before, one unhappy person within a team, regardless of how they express that in the end, can be disastrous on team outcomes. So I think that's been the biggest surprise, but I do think that there are definite strategies to overcome that, and communication is key.
Okay. So I would say on my side, thank you so much for all you share, the way we did it so smooth, soft. I found a way to pick up the book I mentioned, so I'm going to give this to João so that he can give you the name of the book and the author. I think it's more for Ariane, since you're very in this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Again, I repeat, it's a book written by doctors, but we can pick up a lot of things for companies. On my side, thank you so much for the invitation, João and Jose. That's all on my side. I think now it's up to you, João.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. I know you all those emojis. I'm not good on it, but João.
I will not steal much more of your time. I just wanted to say thank you so much, Aurelio, Ariane, and Carla. You guys made this conversation incredible. I already knew it was going to be incredible, but I really enjoyed listening in. I truly believe these are the kinds of topics that will allow customer success to grow, mainly in Portugal, obviously, but I think worldwide. I think the more attention we give it, the more it grows, and we can all grow with it in our own ways. So I really think this is really powerful for this position. Thank you all for joining the call. Look out for my emails. I will be sending you all the recording of this session. And of course, if you have any other questions that you didn't get to put in the chat or something, I have direct contact with these beautiful people, and I'll be able to get you an answer as long as they have the time to give it to me. But yes, look out for my emails. Thank you so much to everyone. And we'll keep in contact.
Thanks for joining, everybody.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you, my dear guests. I've learned a lot.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for having us.